If you want to really see something that's
I just hear these 4 shots and everybo's screaming, drop.
When I looked up, I saw blood on the podium.
God had a hand in this. I mean, he's very blessed. A half inch to the left, and he would have been dead.
Welcome to the 2024 Republican National Convention.
This is the Texas delegation, so you know we're a proud bunch.
We cast our delegate votes for the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and his vice president, J.D. Vance.
Yeah!
We love this country, and we are united to win.
I ask for your partnership, for your support, and I am humbly asking for your vote.
Good Sunday morning and welcome to Eye on Politics. We begin with the whirlwind and historic week for former President Donald Trump, his family and supporters, and the country. There are a number of investigations underway into the assassination attempt against the former president and 3-time GOP presidential nominee. The FBI, the Inspector General, the Department of Homeland Security, the House Oversight Committee, and Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa are all looking into what happened and why. And one of the main questions, of course, is how was it even possible that the accused shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of nearby Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, gained access to the roof of a building so close to where the former president was speaking. Trump said he would only talk about his experiences once because it was just too painful. When he was on the ground, he said he was thinking about all of his supporters.
I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." During his speech, Trump paid tribute to Corey Comparatore, the former fire chief who was killed at his rally while trying to shield his wife and daughter. His helmet and uniform were on display on stage. Trump announced they've raised more than $6 million for his family and for the 2 other victims who were seriously injured. The former president said he rewrote parts of his speech after the assassination attempt with the goal of uniting the country. The discord and division in our society must be healed. We must heal it quickly. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. Trump also pledged to secure the southern border again, and he also discussed inflation, which climbed to record levels in 2022, but prices have not risen by nearly as much recently. I will end the devastating inflation crisis immediately, bring down interest rates, and lower the cost of energy. We will drill, baby, drill. The president can't lower interest rates. The Federal Reserve does that. Also at the convention, Trump's running mate and vice presidential nominee, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, made a direct pitch to working-class voters in the key battleground states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Vance, who turns 40 next month and grew up poor in Ohio, is seen by many Trump supporters as the heir apparent or next generation of the MAGA, or Make America Great Again movement. He also showed how the Republican Party has shifted away under Trump when he criticized the old NAFTA trade deal and a trade deal with China, plus the Iraq War. It's something Republicans approved back then, and Vance criticized President Biden for supporting these policies when he was a senator.
And at each step of the way, in small towns like mine in Ohio or next door in Pennsylvania or Michigan, in states all across our country, jobs were sent overseas and our children were sent to war.
To understand why the Trump-Vance campaign is focusing so heavily on working-class voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, you have to look at the all-important Electoral College map. To win the White House, a candidate needs 270 Electoral College votes. As a result of the Real Clear Politics average of polls, Trump will have reached 268 right now because he leads in such states as Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia, which he lost 4 years ago.
According to the Cook Political Report, right now there are only 3 battleground states, and they are Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. The Biden-Harris campaign won those states 4 years ago and called them their blue wall and their clearest path to victory. If Trump holds on to the other states, he would need only one of these 3 states to win the White House. There's also another state that Democrats have traditionally won that is now in play, and we're talking about Virginia. The Real Clear Politics average of polls shows Trump just moved ahead of President Biden for the first time, albeit barely, by nearly half a percentage point. We spoke with SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson about how crucial Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are, and whether J.D. Vance can help Trump win there.
Well, I think the Trump campaign has calculated, probably correctly, that if they win even one of those states, they've won the election. Because if everything else goes according to predicted form, that is with the Sunbelt states of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia coming back into the Trump camp, which the polls currently show that they should, if that happens, then any of those upper Midwest states would seal the deal for Trump. And I think that played into the logic of the Vance pick. The party is, I think, quite unified behind Trump. They're enthusiastic about his candidacy. And this is the first of the 3 electoral cycles in which he has run where he's actually leading at this point. He was trailing in the polls in both 2016 and 2020 over the summer.
Delegates to the Republican National Convention from North Texas say they were energized this last week. We spoke with Rosalie Escobedo of Tarrant County, Troy Jackson of Dallas County, and Michael Padilla from Collin County about Trump's VP pick and his whirlwind week.
It really came from Saturday being just somber and totally depleted, and we just scuffed it off of us. And there was a joy, there was a jubilation, there was an atmosphere where basically crying lasts for the night and joy comes in the morning. And so we couldn't be more excited to have Trump as our next president.
I think they were energized to make sure that they're engaged going through to help get him across the finish line in November. I felt that in the room. I felt that energy. It just made everyone we're with him 1,000%.
The room erupted with a roar, just like Rosalie said. It was as if trumpets went off as he walked in. So exciting. And from my perspective, I saw that he was taking in all of the support and the energy and the love that we were behind him 100%. It was fantastic.
Former President Trump announced his selection for VP. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance is going to be his running mate. And so, Troy, we'll start with you on this one. What did you think of the pick?
I think J.D. Vance is a great pick because, first of all, of his youth. He's 39 years old. When have we ever had a VP that had the type of zeal? And I believe that J.D. Vance can continue to carry that legacy once Trump is done with his next 4 years. I believe that J.D. Vance can carry that into the next phase of another 8 years.
I like the contrast. Obviously, there's the age. I also like the contrast of we have a billionaire and we have someone that literally wrote a book on being a hillbilly, right? So you have 2 completely different paths that are going to speak to the American people. Looking forward, we have to have a long-term vision. What are we going to do in the future? So I like the fact that we're setting it up for whoever our future leader is going to be.
I think that was the best possible choice for Donald Trump. And this is the reason why. When compared to the current vice president, you'll see a stark contrast between the 2 individuals, their energies, their purpose, and their drive to do the job.
Coming up, Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker's message to the Trump-Vance campaign and her fellow Republicans about cities and urban policy. And then later, we ask one of the top Democrats in North Texas, Dallas County Judge Clay Lewis Jenkins, about whether President Biden should stay in the race or step aside when Eye on Politics returns. The Republican National Convention featured primetime speeches from high-profile Texas Republicans. Both Governor Greg Abbott and Senator Ted Cruz, who's up for re-election this fall against Democratic North Texas Congressman Colin Allred, sharply criticized President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris for allowing record numbers of migrants enter the country illegally.
The president's most sacred duty is to secure our country. Donald Trump fulfilled that duty. Joe Biden deserted his duty. When Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refused to even come to Texas and to see the border crisis that they created. I took the border to them. I began busing illegal immigrants to Washington, D.C.
As a result of Joe Biden's presidency, your family is less safe. Your children are less safe. The country is less safe. But here's the good news. We can fix it. And when Donald Trump is president, we will fix it.
Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson, who made national headlines last year when he announced he was switching parties from being a Democrat to a Republican, also addressed the convention. Even though the city is run by a manager and is nonpartisan, Dallas is the largest city with a Republican mayor. Johnson blasted Democrats for being weak on crime.
The heart of today's woke Democrat Party is with the criminals, not with their victims. Let's make our city safe again by supporting Republicans who will stand up and fight for our safety.
Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker, another Republican who leads one of the largest cities in the U.S., told us cities could play an important role if Trump is elected to a second term. She spoke with us last week after the assassination attempt on the former president. In the last couple of days, we've really witnessed incredible history with the assassination attempt against former President Trump. What was your first reaction when you saw that?
I think shock, like most Americans, and just an immensely heavy heart, especially when you learn that someone had lost their life. And then second was to realize that one of our candidates for president was within millimeters of losing his life. Live streamed and live television, an assassination attempt in my generation is not something we've lived through before. And I think lastly is just a heavy heart because our rhetoric has gotten so divisive in this country, and to think that that now means life or death, that someone can raise their hand to run for president, you know, whether you agree with that person or not, to think that their life is on the line. We have to change. And so I'm hopeful that maybe this can be a turning point for us. And then lastly, just incredibly thankful that President Trump is still with us and alive. And I think if you were like me and watched the RNC convention last night, even if maybe those that don't agree with Republicans or don't view President Trump as their candidate, you had to appreciate that moment in our country's history as he walked into that convention center with over 30,000 people cheering for him. And you could tell he and his family also felt that immense emotion of what they lived through that past weekend.
It was powerful, you thought?
It really was, absolutely, yeah.
So what did you think about the ticket? You're a Republican. What did you think about the Trump-J.D. Vance ticket now?
Well, I would say I was surprised a bit, but pleasantly so.
How so?
I think Senator Vance represents a next generation of leadership. I may not agree with every policy decision he may has made so far in his young career. We're from the same generation. He's a family man right now, raising children just like myself. In this day and age in politics, I think his path to get to this position and to be the VP candidate is incredibly unorthodox, and I think that's really healthy. He does not strike me as a yes person. He strikes me as someone that has his own opinion, incredible experience, especially around foreign policy, and his real focus on domestic policy, especially around poverty. And lastly, I think there's been so much focus, both on the Democratic and Republican side, about the age of our candidates and whether or not they're fit for office. And to have someone that represents the millennial generation as that next level of leadership to pass the torch, I think is incredibly positive.
There's a plank in the Republican platform that says, rebuild our cities, make them safe, clean, and beautiful again. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that plank in the platform as the mayor of the 12th largest city.
I say amen and use Fort Worth as an example. I mean, just last budget, our theme was simple. It was so clean, so safe, and so green. Americans want their cities to be back to basics. These are the things that really matter to them. Safety and public safety is at the foundation of that. Fort Worth has been one of the fastest growing cities in the country, yet one of the safest to raise a family. We also really pride ourselves in having a beautiful, clean city, and it's something we prioritize not just in our assets, but in how we spend your tax dollars in the city of Fort Worth. And I do think cities across the country have gotten away from that. And it's interesting that people are voting with their feet across the country. They want to be in a place like the city of Fort Worth that cares about the things that matter most to their families. And so I say to the Republicans, if that's a platform they're going to take seriously and an intent they're going to really push on if they were in the White House the next 4 years, I would love to work with that administration to do that.
I'm going to ask you about urban policy in, you know, what's still a red county, right? How do you make it work?
Well, I think candidly, Republicans for decades sort of left cities alone, and they paid more attention to suburban voters and rural voters as their base, and I think that's a mistake. And I think the opportunity is to really pay attention. These are not partisan issues. These should be common sense, and frankly, Democrats should care just as much about them as well, but we've let partisan politics play into how you really govern places, and I think in the city we've done an excellent job. As a reminder, we're a city manager form of government. Sometimes it feels different. Maybe people perceive me to be a strong mayor because I'm very involved in the city of Fort Worth and I really care deeply about which policy direction we're going. But my job as chair of this board is to make sure this city looks like it is today and even better 10 years, 20 years into the future. And you can't do that if you don't invest in the things that truly matter. And so I think urban policy really should be the things that matter most to the entire country, right? It's great jobs, it's having safe communities, it's also investing in the right kind of infrastructure. Those are all things that cities that are run well are doing. And so our federal partners need to be doing the exact same thing.
And then there's Project 2025, which has recently gotten a lot of attention. Sarah Jenkins has more about it in this week's brief.
Project 2025 is a 900-page blueprint by the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, about how the next Republican administration should govern. The report calls for eliminating the Department of Education, curbing what it says are abuses in the Affordable Care Act, civil service protections for federal employees, and a major restructuring of the U.S. tax code, including tax cuts for the top 5% and repealing green energy provisions. Project 2025 is spearheaded by two ex-Trump administration officials. However, Trump has distanced himself from the report, saying he has nothing to do with it, and the Heritage Foundation says the report is not affiliated with Trump. According to Project 2025's website, its goal is to have a governing agenda and the right people in place ready to carry this agenda out on day one of the next conservative administration. The foundation said it will ultimately be up to the next conservative president to decide which recommendations to implement.
Coming up, the state of the Biden-Harris campaign. We asked Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins if President Biden should stay in the race when Eye on Politics returns. As Republicans displayed a party united and energized behind former President Trump and his VP, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, the Democratic ticket fell into disarray. Multiple reports have said President Biden is considering dropping out and not running for re-election, despite strong denials from his campaign and the White House. All this began slowly building after the presidential debate June 27th and Biden's highly criticized performance. And the move to oust him has kept accelerating among Democratic leaders and donors. On Friday, Democratic Congressman Mark Vesey of Fort Worth joined 3 other members of Congress in asking President Biden to step down. In a joint letter, the representative said in part, quote, "With great admiration for you personally, it is now time for you to pass the torch to a new generation of Democratic leaders. We must face the reality that widespread public concerns about your age and fitness are jeopardizing what should be a winning campaign." I spoke with one of the region's top Democrats, Dallas County Judge Clay Lewis Jenkins, and I asked him if the president should bow out of the race.
Well, what I've said is that President Biden needs to make his decision.
Well, he says he has. He says he's staying in.
He says he has, and others say that there's still discussions ongoing. I'm not privy to any of that. What I know is that whoever that Democratic nominee is, if it's Joe Biden, who has done a tremendous job with so much in his 3.5 years as president. The CHIPS Act, which brought all these jobs to North Texas to bring in the manufacture of computer chips into the United States and not have to rely on China for those. The infrastructure bill, which is already, we built a lot of trails and we're building roads with the money that's coming from that. And so I'm confident in what he's done thus far. Only he knows all the data points. He and his advisors, who that decision needs to be made sooner or later, or sooner rather than later.
SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson says the Democrats are in uncharted territory.
The fact that the Republicans had a pretty successful convention, I think, deepens the sense of panic on the Democratic side, in the sense that they've got to get somebody better than Joe Biden at the top of their ticket to avoid an electoral disaster. So it's going to be very difficult for President Biden to survive this, particularly because none of the major powers that be in the Democratic Party are standing up for him. They are at best neutral, right? If you saw a Barack Obama or a Hakeem Jeffries or a Nancy Pelosi come out and forcefully say, Joe Biden is our guy, we're riding with him, let's put this foolishness to bed and move on, that would be powerful. None of them are doing that, right? They are all kind of letting him twist in the wind because it seems that they all want him out.
Friendly reminder, the full interviews are on our website, cbsnewstexas.com. Go to the Eye on Politics section. And that's all for Eye on Politics this week, and what a week it has been. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening at CBS News Texas. Hope to see you again next week. From all of us here, have a great Sunday.